All the characters in the story are over 18 years old. The fact is that my mother is a great doctor, as I could see for myself. I was not sick at all thanks to her care, as well as her professional skills. Moreover, Mom is a surgeon, which is actually very rare, because basically all surgeons are men. And indeed, it's hard to believe that such a fragile woman, with a shock of thick dark brown hair on her head and huge blue eyes, is not an actress or a model. However, appearances can be deceptive. Whenever I admired her professional skills, my mother would say with a sad smile, "There was an even better doctor, your father." Maybe it's true. My father was a member of the organization Doctors Without Borders and died shortly after my birth, eliminating the consequences of a monstrous earthquake in the Himalayas. So it was just the two of us, barely making ends meet. But that didn't stop us from getting along well with each other. And one day, a schoolgirl girl was brought to the mother's department with severe injuries after an accident. She didn't have any documents with her. The manager just took a look and pronounced the verdict: hopeless. But Mom volunteered to try. "Okay, come on," he replied without enthusiasm and went home. And Mom worked all night, but did the impossible. The girl survived. And the next day it turned out that it was the daughter of a very wealthy man. She ran away from school, tricking her guards, and went for a ride with friends. When she was finally found, her mother was at home. She was resting after duty. The manager honestly told me how it was. And soon my mother's account turned out to be literally astronomical for us. The gratitude of a happy father. That's how our dream came true. Mom bought an apartment in the center, a small cottage in a gated community, and a good car. But if we could only know what kind of adventure fate has in store for us in this village. Of course, I always had a certain opinion about our elite, whom I knew mainly from anecdotes, but the reality exceeded all expectations. It's right to say, there is a joke in every joke. Our neighbors turned out to be mostly arrogant, dumb bastards, who, moreover, from an excess of money, also had a dope in their head. Therefore, we decided not to get along with any of them briefly. But the careful mother always tried to maintain good neighborly relations, and one stupid girl still got to her. She was 15 years younger than her husband, walked left and right from him, and when her husband began to educate her, she hid with us. And my husband was, as they say, a big shot, of those who constantly talk intelligently from the TV screen about what they never understood. And his goner was even higher than his horns. At that time, I already understood quite well what was going on, and several times I warned my mother not to interfere in these family problems. Of course, she agreed with me, but still the story continued and reached its climax on that day, so memorable to me, the end of July. After Mom saved a high-ranking daughter, the attitude towards her became very careful. The head of the department kept his nose to the wind sensitively, and for the last 2 years, my mother got a vacation at the best time, in the summer. We spent it in our new home. The weather has been great all last week. We've been swimming and sunbathing all day. When the thunderstorm passed the day before and it got colder, it turned out that we had launched a garden. The black currant, so beloved by my mother, has ripened and has already begun to crumble. It was necessary to rob her urgently. That's what we were doing. Mom's hands are delicate, like a pianist's. She carefully protects them and puts on thin but durable surgical gloves to work in the garden. I love my mother very much and always have been, and I admire her hands especially. And in general, my mother and I have always had a special relationship. I was eternally grateful to her for the fact that after the death of my father, there was no third person between us. She gave me all her unspent love. We had our own little secret. We usually always slept together. And that's how it turned out, and I was infinitely grateful to her for it. Although I didn't really understand the depth of the idea at the time. I really loved it when we picked berries together, because at that time we talked about everything in the world. Therefore, I was not at all thrilled with the intrusion of a neighbor. He came up from his side of the fence, roughly breaking down bushes, and I immediately realized that, according to his habit, he was very drunk. "Hey, doctor, have you got my goat again?" The neighbor unceremoniously addressed his mother. She always said that medical duty does not come off with a white coat, and, no matter how she treated our neighbors, everyone in the village knew that she was a doctor and could be contacted at any time of the day. To do this, we always had an emergency first aid kit ready. as well as a set of sterile surgical instruments. I was always annoyed by these familiar manners, but my mother answered him conciliatingly, "Listen, I've already told you that you're going to end up very badly if you don't stop drinking. You already have huge liver problems. And we don't have anyone. If you want, you can go and see." The man hiccuped loudly, swayed, and said, "I'm going to go and take a look." And he went to his house. "What a freak," I said to my mom when he walked away. The berries grew in the farthest corner of the garden. We picked them in the middle of the bushes and did not see the gate. So we did not notice that the neighbor was already on our site. The gate, of course, was never locked. And why? After all, the village is guarded. Suddenly, there was a sharp pop, and leaves rained down from a nearby bush. I looked around in amazement and froze. A neighbor was standing on the path, and a smoking gun was in his hands. Dropping the basket, I grabbed my mother's hand and dragged her towards the house. We were already on the steps when there was a second bang, and suddenly Mom screamed loudly and fell. A red stain was spreading rapidly on her white dress. I picked her up, dragged her into the hallway with a desperate effort, and then quickly slammed the door and locked it. But almost immediately, the door was shaken by a mighty blow hitting with the butt. I realized. At such moments, you think exceptionally fast. The door is on our snot. We were led to guard. It opens inside and won't last long, and the hallway is cramped and we have nowhere to go here. He will shoot us like partridges. There was a hammer on the coffee table. I grabbed him in my right hand, and with my left, between blows, I pulled back the latch. Immediately, the door flew open. The freak collapsed on the carpet next to his mother and got hit in the back of the head. He was quiet for a few seconds, but then he started to get up, leaning on the gun. Shrieking in horror, I rushed to him and began to beat him randomly with all my might. I don't know how many times I hit, many times. But then Mom woke up and shouted, "Stop it, stop it," and then grabbed my arm. Mom bent over him, but immediately straightened up and looked at me in horror. "That's it. There's no way to help him." I quickly slammed the door and locked it. "Mom, what are you talking about? To hell with him. That's where he's going. Come on, you lie down and I'll call an ambulance. You're injured." "Are you crazy? What kind of ambulance? They'll call the police right now, and that's it. It'll be over with us." "Why?" "He wanted to kill us. He's drunk." I was defending myself. "Nothing will happen to us." "Oh, darling." My mother smiled sadly. "If only everything were so simple. You can't call the police or an ambulance. I'll do everything myself now." "By yourself? But how can you? And you're going to help me now. Let's go." Mom leaned on my arm and we went into the room. I noticed that Mom was very pale and biting her lips. "Is it really hurting you?" I asked anxiously. "Yes, very much," she replied, without unclenching her teeth. "That's why we'll start with this now." I led my mother to the couch and she carefully lay down on her stomach. "But I can't do anything," I exclaimed in fright. "You don't have to," Mom replied. "Just do what I say." "Okay." Carefully lift up my dress. It was a light white sundress. As gently as I could, I hooked the elastic band and pulled it down, and he froze in shock. And so the dream came true, but under two tragic circumstances. "Wake up," Mom called out to me. "Rather, take this spray and spray it on the wound." Summer is a time of endless small injuries, so Mom always had this drug ready. But now she needed him herself. I was very familiar with it. It had both disinfecting, hemostatic, and analgesic effects, and also had a very pleasant smell. Therefore, as soon as I sprayed the wound abundantly, my mother's cheeks immediately turned pink and I realized that she felt better. The pain stopped. "Very good, darling," she said to me. "Now the important thing is, go and see what he shot at us with. You know about guns." I ran into the hallway and carefully pulled his gun out from under the dead freak. "Yes, this is a smoothbore semi-automatic 12-gauge. I emptied it. There were still 3 rounds left. There are several large, shiny metal balls in a translucent plastic cylinder. It's buckshot." I quickly returned to the room. "Mom, it's buckshot. What is its diameter?" "I think it's 9 millimeters. Like a pistol bullet," Mom concluded. "So we'll take it out the same way." I shuddered, but quickly pulled myself together. What should I do? "Go and get my suitcase," Mom ordered. It was a folding orange suitcase, the same as the ambulance doctor's. One was in our house, the other was in the trunk of the car. I quickly found it and brought it. Put it here. Mom continued. Now open it. Now go and wash your hands thoroughly. I did as I was told and returned to the room. Now take out a sterile napkin and put it on the table, like this. Take out the tool. You need 2 surgical clamps right now. Cut the package with scissors, but don't take it out yet. Very well, now take out the package of gloves. Also cut it. Go and wash your hands again. I obediently obeyed and returned, a little frozen by the prospect. Well done, Mom praised. Don't be afraid, everything is fine. Come here. Let's get started. Take a disinfectant spray and spray it on your hands. Okay, now put on your gloves. Well done, good. Take a sterile swab and blot the wound. When I did this, I saw that the wound was not as deep as I thought, no more than a centimeter, and there, in the depth, a shiny ball was clearly visible. It must have hit Mom not directly, but by ricocheting off the railing. I wasn't so scared anymore. Mom, the balloon is visible, I said. Very good. Now take 2 clips. With one you will open the edges of the wound as wide as possible, and with the second try to grab this ball. Let's. Carefully, carefully. I inserted the clamp and slowly opened it, and immediately grabbed the ball with the second one and quickly took it out. Well done, everything is fine. Mom encouraged. And now take streptocide. Open the bag and put the rash in there. Like this? Did you pour everything out? Let's have another one. Good, good. Now open the surgical patch and seal it. Well done, once again. That's all. Encouraged by such a successful completion of the operation, I calmed down. Well, you see, she remarked, smiling, there's no such thing as a silver lining, but you could finally admire me. You've wanted this for a long time, haven't you? Yes, I wanted to, I answered honestly, but not under such circumstances. Come on, whatever the circumstances are. Take off your gloves, Mom continued. I couldn't believe my luck, but I've always wanted it badly too, and so I didn't hesitate. Well done, Mom replied. Now let's do this, and she waved lightly, showing me an example. Take your time, gradually. I couldn't answer, my throat was tight. A few more convulsive movements and I exploded. I struggled to my trembling feet and lay down next to him. Mom, darling, darling, thank you. The first thing I said when I caught my breath. Then suddenly bang, bang, bang. I even shuddered, but then I realized it's fireworks on the next site. They're always celebrating something there. Very good, darling, Mom smiled. Maybe the shots will pass for fireworks. Now let's get down to business. After that, we made love. When we finished loading, Mom went to get the gun and returned, holding it in her hands in confusion. Where should I put it? It's so long it won't fit anywhere. It's working out, I replied. Let me try. Okay, that's it. It's done. I took off the butt, and the gun also went into the trunk, following its owner. It took no more than half an hour, and my mother and I were already leaving through the security gate. Mom tried not to show it, but I knew what it was like for her to drive right now. A familiar guard looked into the salon. You're leaving in vain. They said on the radio that the weather will improve again tomorrow. And we'll be back, Mom replied cheerfully. We'll just take our berries. And she looked back at the back seat, where there were baskets tied with gauze and exuding a delicate fragrance. The guard nodded his head happily. He came from a neighboring village and understood all the garden problems well. Ugh, we missed it. Mom breathed a sigh of relief as we pulled onto the highway. She knew these places perfectly well because when she was a girl, her parents rented a cottage in a nearby village. There's a turnoff to the country road right now, and there's a secluded place there, Mom continued. Right here. There was an old, abandoned, but very deep well. That's what we needed. After getting rid of the neighbor and all the evidence, we drove to the city and first of all stopped at her clinic. There, the topic of the wound was finally closed. I had to wait in the car for about half an hour and then Mom came out, smiling contentedly. That's it. I've been patched up, she announced. I'm as good as new now. And then we went to ours, to my father's younger sister. At first, she was very surprised by our visit. Although she and her mother never quarreled, however, for some reason they communicated very rarely, it just so happened. But the baskets with fragrant berries spoke for themselves, and my aunt warmly thanked us. And I was immediately captured by my cousins, two charming little girls, and while my mother and aunt were talking in the kitchen, they showed me all their toys and books. After all the horrors that we have been through, it was extremely pleasant for me to hear their sweet ringing voices, to mess with them. Then, a few years later, my mother confessed to me that it was not by chance that she reminded my aunt about us. "You see, my love," she said, "if something had gone wrong, I would have taken over everything, and you should not have gone to boarding school under any circumstances. We spent the night in a city apartment, but we were so tired that we didn't do anything else. You just fell down like dead." In the morning, I turned on the TV cautiously. Well, I think now the news is number one. A famous one has disappeared. But no, nothing like that. We returned to the country house, but it's quiet there too. They started looking for a neighbor only 3 days later, when his wife deigned to return home. However, she did not go anywhere, but hung out here in the village with some rotten lover. Therefore, the most unpleasant questions began to be asked to her. And I think it's fair, because she's the reason all this mess started. And we were helped out by the fact that after the thunderstorm there was a power failure, and the entire district video surveillance system was turned off. Mom calmly replied that she hadn't seen or heard anything, and that's why they fell behind. It all ended, as usual, with nothing. The neighbor's wife was often dragged for interrogations. On countless TV shows she shed tears profusely, surrounded by a pack of hysterical girlfriends, and gradually everything came to naught. Of course, it is a very unpleasant story, but it is only thanks to her that our relationship with my mother has moved to a new level. As they say, there would be no happiness, but misfortune helped. Thanks to Mom's wisdom, we now remember this day not as the scariest in life, but as the happiest. My mother really wanted me to become a doctor, and it was this first successful operation that influenced my choice. I am currently studying to be a surgeon at one of the universities. My mother and I have been citizens of a normal country for a long time, and therefore I am not at all afraid to tell my story here.